Good evening, and welcome to Dreamy Science Stories, a quiet corner of the world where curiosity can finally exhale. Tonight, we're not just touching the surface of a familiar ocean. We're journeying into the layers beneath it, into realms where light dissolves into blue shadow, where rivers of brine curl across the seafloor like liquid mirrors, and where strange creatures live on chemical energy instead of sunlight. We'll drift past the silent snowfall of marine snow, past volcanoes that erupt in total darkness, and into the hidden realms where life glows with its own quiet fire. These are places humans once believed unreachable, yet they've been here all along, patiently waiting in the deep. As you settle in, let your breath soften and loosen its edges, as though the entire world has slowed to meet your pace. Let the stillness gather around you like warm water. And if this gentle voyage stirs a sense of wonder, or simply helps your mind unwind, you can always leave a soft like, a quiet share, or a small comment. It helps other dreamy travelers drift their way here too. Now, when you're ready, let's begin our slow descent into the underworld below. Not far below the dancing surface, there is a place where daylight loosens its hold. Scientists call it the euphotic limit, but to drifting creatures, it must feel like the edge of an eternal dusk. Here, sunlight weakens with every meter, scattering into soft blues until colors melt into one another and shadows thicken to quiet shapes. The world does not turn dark all at once. It sighs into dimness, layer by gentle layer. In this fading light, physics bends perception. Red wavelengths disappear first, swallowed by water. Oranges go next. Only blue survives the journey downward, shimmering like the last memory of day. It is a slow surrender, a quiet dissolving of brightness into calm. Imagine yourself floating here, the ocean above you still bright and trembling, the ocean below deep and quiet, stretching like a great cathedral of blue mist. You are suspended in the seam between worlds, the last breath of day and the first whisper of night. Creatures born in this twilight carry the colors of disappearance. Silvers, soft blues, transparent skins that bloom into clarity. Their bodies are made for blending, for becoming parcon of the dim. And as the light continues its descent into softer and softer hues, another world begins to stir below, waiting for the night. As you drift deeper, tiny white flecks begin to pass you, slow, delicate, weightless. At first, they resemble ordinary snowflakes swirling in a winter storm. But these are marine snow, the ocean's ancient rain. Each particle is a drifting story. Fragments of plankton, crystals of salt, broken shells, threads of organic matter. Tiny remains of lives live far above. Together, they descend endlessly, like the dust of forgotten sunlight. Marine snow is the quiet engine of the deep sea. What begins as microscopic life near the surface eventually falls through the twilight like offerings. The particles clump together, gathering minerals, gathering memories, then sink toward the dark plains far below. Some will take days to fall, others months. Seen up close, each flake looks like a miniature world, flecked with shapes and textures, a drifting lantern for small creatures that nibble at it during its long descent. The snow feeds them, sustains them, connects the shining surface to the shadowed depths. If you hold still here, the snowfall seems endless. It is as if the ocean is slowly, patiently writing its history, letting it fall grain by grain through the turning blue. And as the snow deepens, the dim world ahead gathers more mystery. In this softening light, a sudden glimmer catches your eye, a ripple of silver moving in unison. A school of fish passes through the water, each body reflecting what little sunlight remains. Their scales are arranged like tiny mirrored tiles, reflecting blue above, shadow below. To predators, they seem to vanish, dissolving into the water's shifting brightness. The science behind it is astonishing. Each scale contains layers of guanine crystals, thin, delicate plates arranged in perfect alignment. These crystals bounce incoming light in different directions, creating an illusion of transparency. The fish do not glow or shine. They simply borrow the world's own colors and give them back. The school moves like a single shimmering organism, turning all at once, folding and unfolding like silk caught in a slow current. It is a ballet performed in near silence, each fish trusting the motion of the others, each trusting the water's rhythm. From afar, the school becomes a drifting cloud of silver echoes. From close up, it becomes a field of tiny mirrors, each reflecting a different angle of the dimming sun. And as the school fades into the blue, the world ahead grows darker, softer, more mysterious. Just below the twilight's edge, the world begins to glow in unexpected ways. It starts with plankton, small, delicate drifters that respond to movement with a soft blue spark. When stirred by waves or touched by passing fins, they ignite momentarily like drops of starlight. It is not reflected sunlight. It is light born from life itself. The chemistry is simple, yet miraculous. Inside these plankton are molecules called luciferins, paired with enzymes called luciferases. When the two meet in the presence of oxygen, they create a burst of cold, gentle light. No heat, no flame, just a glow, like the first firefly rising at dusk. Imagine drifting through these drifting galaxies. With every slow movement of your hand, gentle streaks of light bloom and curl. Schools of fish leave trails behind them, glowing wakes that fade like memories. Even your breath seems to stir the water into constellations. These plankton do not glow to dazzle. Some shine to confuse predators, others to signal distress. Some glow by accident, like tiny lanterns brushed by the sea's currents. Their light marks the beginning of the ocean's night sky, a vast, shifting cosmos made not of stars, but of living sparks. And deeper still, the lights begin to speak. Continue downward, and the glow changes. Here, bioluminescence is no longer accident or alarm. It becomes communication. Small creatures send pulses of light to one another, flashing in patterns that are part signal, part map, part secret message in the dark. Some use blinking rhythms to attract mates, soft blue calls echoing through the water. Others send a brief shimmer to warn their kind of danger. A few create moving bands of light along their bodies, like glowing sentences drifting in slow arcs. Science shows that each species has its own grammar of glow. Short bursts, long trails, sudden fades, pulsing dots. Their luminous organs contain photophores, tiny biological lanterns filled with chemical fuel and reflective tissue. These organs can open and close like eyelids, shaping the language of light. Visually, it is magical. Small bodies glittering like commas and ellipses in a drifting paragraph of darkness. Entire schools shimmer in coordinated waves, as if the ocean itself were breathing in sparkling lines. This world below the twilight does not rely on sound or sight alone. It relies on glimmers, on subtle pulses, on whispers of light passing through the quiet water. And as these whispers guide you deeper, the true night of the ocean begins to unfurl. The light has fully surrendered now, and the sea around you deepens into a calm, velvety black. You drift as though suspended in night, moving through water that feels thicker, quieter, more ancient. Here, in the midnight zone, sight is no longer the ruler of survival. The creatures that live in this region carry bodies shaped by darkness, forms so perfectly adapted to invisibility that they seem crafted from the water itself. Many are transparent. Their skin, muscle, even portions of their organs are so clear you can see the faint shimmer of internal fluids drifting like pale smoke. Transparency is an elegant solution to the absence of light. If no color can be reflected, then no predator can trace your outline. Scientifically, this clarity comes from the way their cells scatter light. Instead of pigment or dense tissue, they use gelatinous matrices that bend and diffuse photons until body edges dissolve. To float beside one is to witness a delicate phantom, a creature whose presence is felt more than seen, shimmering faintly like the memory of something that once had shape. As you sink deeper, the pressure rises, stacking upon itself like layers of ancient mountains. The weight here is crushing, thousands of times greater than the air that rests upon the land above. Yet the animals of this zone remain impossibly soft. They are built from water-rich tissues, almost pillow-like in their flexibility, which allows them to withstand forces that would flatten creatures from the bright surface. Their bodies shift effortlessly, bending with the currents, as if the ocean were molding them moment by moment. This softness is not fragility, it is strength in the most gentle form imaginable. They survive because they yield. Some creatures here have evolved extraordinary eyes, vast orbs that fill much of their heads. These enormous eyes collect even the faintest traces of light, tiny glimmers from bioluminescent sparks, subtle reflections of drifting particles, a single stolen photon from some distant flicker. The eyes shine back a muted silver, like polished stones in a cave. Within them lies a world of dense photoreceptors arranged with exquisite sensitivity, tuned to blue wavelengths that travel farthest through the ocean's black corridors. These eyes do not simply see. They gather the darkness, decoding its faintest hints until an entire landscape of invisible motion becomes readable. But not all rely on sight. Some have abandoned eyes altogether, living in a reality sculpted by vibrations and chemical whispers. Their faces are smooth, unbroken, as if molded from soft clay. Their bodies interpret the currents themselves, each shift in water pressure delivering a message: movement, presence, danger, opportunity. These blind wanderers navigate with elegance, guided not by vision, but by the subtle trembling of the sea. As silence thickens, a shape emerges from the black, a viper fish, drifting with its jaws slightly parted. The curve of its mouth glows with a ghostly blue-green line, an eerie smile etched into the dark. This glow is not decoration, it is allure. The viperfish's photophores scatter gentle sparks along its lower jaw, calling small creatures closer with promises of safety or curiosity, or some instinctive pull toward the familiar gleam. The moment prey approaches, the jaw opens wider than seems possible, hinged in a way that feels almost unreal, and needle-like teeth snap shut faster than thought. In the faint glimmer, the entire motion is a blur, a whisper of violence swallowed instantly by the deep. Nearby, something more graceful drifts past, a ribbon-like jellyfish, moving with the elegance of silk caught in a slow current. Its body trails behind it in long, translucent waves, bands that pulse with subtle iridescence, creating the illusion of a drifting flame underwater. Its form is delicate, almost impossibly so, yet it travels great distances through this black desert, propelled by soft contractions that barely disturb the water. As it turns, the faintest red tint shimmers along its underside, a color that disappears completely in the midnight zone, rendering the jelly almost invisible to all but those close enough to touch it. It is a dancer in the dark, glowing only when it must, vanishing the moment it chooses stillness. Then deeper still, the ocean reveals one of its most secretive illusions, the red dragonfish, a creature cloaked in darkness, not through absence of light, but through its mastery of it. Unlike most deep-sea species, which glow blue, the dragonfish emits red bioluminescence, light that nearly all other animals cannot see. This gives it a private flashlight, invisible to its prey. It glides through the water like a silent hunter, illuminating unsuspecting creatures with rays they cannot detect, its own body absorbing nearly all stray reflections. To the ocean around it, the dragonfish is a ghost, a shadow that sees without being seen. And then suddenly, the darkness moves. A haze, almost like smoke, begins to rise from the deeper layers below. It is the beginning of the nightly migration, the largest movement of life on Earth. Billions of small organisms ascend toward the surface, drifting upward like a living tide. Tiny fish, zooplankton, squid, and many other creatures rise in coordinated waves. Each night, they leave this cold darkness to feed in the richer waters above, and with dawn, they retreat again to safety. Their ascent is slow but immense, a vast curtain of life lifting through the ocean miles wide and miles deep. This migration shapes the rhythm of the entire planet. It moves carbon from surface waters downward. It affects predators, nutrient cycles, and even global climate. The creatures follow a hidden clock, a circadian rhythm sculpted not by sunlight, which cannot reach them, but by internal sensors responsive to faint changes in the blue dimness far above. They rise as the sun disappears behind the horizon. They fall as the first hints of day return. If you drift among them, you feel their presence as a soft rain of movement, tiny shadows passing around you in gentle waves. Their bodies shimmer briefly, some from bioluminescent organs that pulse faintly, others from the silver gleam of scales catching the leftover glow of living sparks. The water seems full, crowded with quiet purpose. As they rise, the whole midnight zone feels as though it is breathing, exhaling toward the surface under night's protection, and you drift with them, carried by their ancient instinct, rising and falling with their soft tide. They are the pulse of the hidden ocean, the silent heartbeat that has continued for millions of years. As the great ascent unfolds around you, the water seems to thrum with quiet motion. Each creature rises with intention, yet without urgency, as though responding to a call older than memory. The farther you descend into this silent procession, the more you begin to sense the intricacy of their nightly pilgrimage. Tiny shrimp drift past like reddish embers that have forgotten their flame. Soft-bodied worms shimmer faintly, pulsing in waves as though breathing with the current. Gelatinous spheres bob upward like fragile moons, trailing filaments that glow in the shifting dark. And then come the lantern-like forms, small fish carrying pockets of light along their sides. These glows serve as alignment signals, helping them keep formation. When the school turns, the lights ripple like sequins sewn into the fabric of a living tapestry. Their motion feels almost choreographed, as if an unseen conductor shapes their path. Yet, this choreography is written entirely by evolution. Millions of years of trial, error, survival, and refinement guiding them through the dusk and back again. Higher predators join the ascent too. Squid glide past, their bodies glossy and sleek, lit from within by a constellation of photophores. Their arms open and close with quiet confidence, sensing vibrations and faint glimmers of movement. Some flash patterns of light along their skin as warnings. Others dim themselves into shadow as they approach prey, shadow melting into shadow. Even in darkness, their grace is unmistakable. They fall through the water like thought, vanishing as quickly as they appear. Yet for all this movement, the midnight zone remains strangely tranquil. The stillness of the surrounding dark absorbs every flicker, every ripple, every silent chase. Here, life is not loud or frantic. It is deliberate, almost meditative. Predators and prey share a certain softness of motion, a subdued rhythm shaped by the immense pressure that envelops them. Every gesture must be efficient, every pulse of muscle purposeful. Nothing is wasted in a place where energy is scarce and the cold is absolute. As you drift deeper into this hidden procession, you begin to notice something else. The faintest shimmer of particles suspended in the water, too fine to be called snow, too ephemeral to name. These tiny flecks act as lanterns for the creatures that hunt by silhouette. When a fish passes between you and the drifting specks, the pattern of light shifts subtly, revealing the outline of a moving body. The predators read these patterns with exquisite precision, seeing not by direct light, but by the way darkness interrupts the field of drifting dust. Some animals have evolved bodies so transparent they barely leave a shadow at all. Juvenile fishes float beside you like glass carvings, their spines etched in delicate threads of silver. Their hearts beat faintly, visible as pale ripples within the chest. Even their digestive tracts are clear, revealing glowing flecks of plankton consumed earlier. For them, transparency is protection, an act of becoming indistinguishable from the water itself. The deeper you sink, the more you feel the pressure surrounding you. It presses in from every direction, unyielding, ancient, immense. But the creatures here do not resist it. Instead, they let it shape them. Their bodies hold few air pockets, their tissues rich with water, allowing them to exist in equilibrium with their environment. To live here is to embrace softness. To survive is to yield. A slow-moving shape emerges from the black, a creature with eyes large as moons, staring with endless calm. The big-eyed grenadier drifts gracefully, its gaze absorbing every flicker of bioluminescence around it. Those cavernous eyes are not fearful. They are simply tuned to gather whatever photons the world offers. Looking into them feels like looking into the memory of the sea itself. Nearby, a hatchetfish glimmers faintly, its thin metallic body reflecting the last bits of stray light in perfect mimicry of the water above. Its sides are lined with tiny lights that it can brighten or dim as needed, matching the brightness of the waters overhead, so no predator below can see its silhouette. It is camouflage, elevated into something almost poetic, a dance between self and environment, light and shadow, existence and invisibility. Just when the world seems entirely hushed, a sudden flicker slices through the dark. A predator makes its move. It begins not with speed, but with light. A burst of luminescence from a lure held just before its face. The glow pulses once, twice, soft as a heartbeat. A smaller fish, mesmerized, drifts closer. In an instant, jaws snap shut and the light vanishes. Only darkness remains. The entire act feels like a sigh, a gesture swallowed by silence. Far below, the mass migration continues, an upward river of life moving through the night. It is difficult to comprehend the scale of it. Trillions of organisms stirring in unison, guided by a rhythm tied to the turning of the earth. Their ascent influences everything: the carbon cycle, the balance of nutrients, the very shape of marine ecosystems. They rise toward the faint glimmer of the surface, though they themselves will never see the sky. But what tells them when to move? Scientists believe their bodies sense slight shifts in the blue glow, far above, even when their eyes cannot detect a difference. Some respond to chemical signals in the water, subtle shifts carried from shallow layers by tides and currents. Others track minute changes in pressure as the sun's warmth touches the surface, long before actual light reaches them. Their rhythms are ancient, ingrained across millions of years, synchronized with the spinning of the planet. As they ascend, the midnight zone becomes quieter, emptier, more spacious. The darkness grows wider around you, like the interior of a vast cathedral. Only a few residents remain behind: solitary hunters, patient drifters, creatures with no need to chase the bounty above. They wait in the stillness, conserving energy, moving only when moved by the sea itself. You linger for a moment in this deep, velvety quiet. The last echoes of bioluminescent trails fade in the distance. The faint glow of migrating creatures softens into shadow, and in the calm that follows, the midnight zone returns to its natural state, wide, silent, ancient, a cradle of darkness where each life is carved into shape by pressure, scarcity, and time. Then slowly, the ocean begins to shift again. A cooler breath rises from the abyss below, drawing you downward toward places where no twilight ever reaches, where the darkness thickens into something almost tangible. The midnight zone releases you gently, and you drift toward the deeper world waiting beneath it, where the silence grows even deeper and the mysteries grow even stranger. The sea grows colder now, and the darkness deepens into something thicker, an ancient stillness that feels almost solid around you. As you drift past 4,000 meters, you enter a realm untouched by sunlight for millions of years. The abyssal zone stretches out before you like an endless dreamscape, a world so quiet it feels like the moon's shadow resting upon Earth. Time slows here. Movement becomes rare and deliberate, You sense the weight of an age without seasons, a calm so deep it almost vibrates. Below you, the vast abyssal plains unfold, flat and immense, stretching farther than the great deserts on land. These plains are the quiet floors of the ocean, where the world settles into repose. Here the seafloor lies smooth and open, covered in fine sediment that drifts down for centuries before coming to rest. The ground is pale, almost silver in the faint traces of bioluminescent glow that sweep across it. Nothing stirs unless the currents choose to move a grain. It is a place where silence becomes a landscape, where the absence of light carves out a gentle, eternal calm. Occasionally, the monotony breaks. Rising from the plain, a mountain lifts itself toward the darkness above, a seamount, solitary and enigmatic. Some are ancient volcanoes long extinguished. Others are newborn towers built by magma rising through the crust. These mountains stand like islands in a world without air, their summits climbing upward for thousands of meters, but never breaching the surface. Their slopes hold life that clings in delicate outposts, corals shaped like fragile sculptures, sponges opening their soft bodies to the slow-moving currents, small fish sheltering in crevices between ancient basalt. Each mountain is its own world, a quiet citadel rising from the deep. As you pass over one of these seamounts, you feel the faint tug of the water bending around its form. Even here, in the stillness of the abyss, the landscape shapes the flow of the ocean. Currents peel away from the slopes like soft sighs. Sediments drift upward in swirling veils. Creatures gather in the lee of the mountain, where the water slows and food settles. It is a reminder that even in places where motion feels absent, the earth continues to shape itself. Then, the mountains fade behind you, and the plains return, smoother, quieter, endless once more. A soft rain of marine snow, heavier now than in the midnight zone, rests across the seafloor in a thin layer. It is the ocean's memory, preserved as drifting fragments of life eventually sink to this distant floor. Some patches gather into delicate mounds where currents swirl. Others spread evenly, like pale dust across a forgotten library. This snow is nourishment, the foundation of the abyssal food web. Without it, life here would simply fade. Creatures of the abyss have learned to wait for this slow rain with patience that spans years. They feed quietly, carefully, savoring each organic grain as though it carries the warmth of the sun itself. Some will seize a rare windfall, a jellyfish, a dying squid, the body of a whale falling through the deep like a collapsed star, becoming a feast that lasts generations. The pressure here is immense. Every square inch of your surroundings is crushed beneath the weight of the world above, yet the inhabitants of this realm move with remarkable grace. They have no rigid bones to splinter under such force. Instead, their bodies are made mostly of gel, fluid, flexible, compliant. They yield to the pressure rather than resist it. Their softness is their strength. Imagine a creature shaped like a drifting ribbon, its muscles delicate as sighs. When it moves, it bends effortlessly, its body swaying with the water rather than forcing it aside. Its tissues contain almost no air, nothing that could be compressed to the point of breaking. Instead, the water inside them matches the pressure of the water outside, making each creature an extension of the sea itself. To live here is is to blend with the very substance of the world. Inside these soft bodies, proteins work silently to maintain structure in conditions that would unravel the cells of creatures from the surface. Specialized molecules stabilize membranes, keeping them from collapsing under pressure. These molecules function like gentle supports, folding around delicate structures, ensuring enzymes continue their slow, essential dance. One such molecule, TMAO, accumulates in higher concentrations the deeper the creature lives. It is an invisible protector, a biochemical guardian helping life endure under crushing force. Some animals even alter the shapes of their proteins, creating versions that operate best in cold, high-pressure environments. These proteins are flexible at low temperatures and resist the tendency to denature. They keep chemical reactions moving at the right pace, ensuring muscles can contract, nerves can send messages, and cells can hold their shape. It is a kind of internal choreography adjusted for the deep, every molecule performing its movement in slow motion. Then you see it, a snailfish drifting just above the seafloor, pale as moonlit mist. It seems impossibly fragile, its skin translucent, its fins like wisps of vapor. Yet this creature holds a record among vertebrates. It has been observed at more than 8,000 meters deep in some trenches, enduring pressures no other fish can survive. Its bones are soft, more cartilage than calcium. Its body is so rich in water that it barely resists the currents around it, and yet its movement is precise, delicate, purposeful. The snailfish's skull is lightweight, its teeth small and suited to tiny prey. Its internal chemistry is tuned to the abyss, filled with protective molecules that keep its cells functioning where others would collapse. It does not merely endure the deep. It thrives here, slipping through the water with a serenity that makes the crushing pressure seem gentle. Around you, other creatures also drift in patient silence. The sea cucumber inches across the seafloor, its mouth ringed with soft tentacles that sweep the sediment in slow, hypnotic motions. A brittle star stretches its arms like fragile filigree, sensing chemical signals in the water. A giant amphipod scuttles across the plain, its shell thin but strong enough to survive the deep. Their movements are unhurried, almost meditative. Energy is precious here, and every gesture is small, efficient, graceful. Occasionally, a patch of sediment trembles as something beneath the surface shifts, a worm emerging from its burrow, or a creature that lives buried in the soft floor. These animals spend much of their lives below the surface, protected from predators and insulated from the cold. When they rise, their bodies shimmer faintly, coated with particles that drift away like pale smoke. The abyss is not barren, it is simply quiet, existing at a pace that feels both ancient and eternal. Here, temperature changes by only a degree or two over centuries. Currents move like slow breaths across continents. Creatures live long lives, some reaching ages unthinkable near the surface, their cells dividing only rarely, savoring the little they receive. In this profound stillness, the world feels vast and intimate at once. The darkness has weight, but it is not oppressive. It is soft, sleeping, watchful. You drift through it like a wandering dream, carried by the faintest currents. The plains stretch onward, the mountains rise and fall in their solitary dignity. and the creatures around you glow with quiet resilience. Then something shifts. The water grows colder, the pressure increases even more, and the world below you darkens into a deeper shade of black. The abyss is releasing you gently, guiding you toward the next realm, a place where the ocean's deepest secrets sleep in trenches that cut into the earth like ancient scars. And as you follow the slow descent, the silence thickens once again, ready to welcome you into the world beneath even the abyss. The water grows colder and quieter as you drift downwards, but the darkness here is not empty. It is layered with secrets, strange, shimmering, impossible places that exist only in the deepest corners of the ocean. These are not merely habitats, but phenomena, hidden landscapes sculpted by chemistry and pressure, shaped by the slow breathing of the earth itself. As you cross into this part of the deep, the world begins to feel less like a natural environment and more like the dream of a planet half asleep. The seafloor slopes gently, then levels out into a broad, shadowed plain. At first, everything seems familiar. Soft sediment, drifting snow, a few lonely creatures moving like quiet thoughts through the dark. But then, something catches your eye, a reflection too smooth, too perfect, as though a mirror had been placed on the bottom of the sea. As you approach, the shimmer becomes clearer. A lake appears, an entire body of water sitting inside the water itself. Its surface is still and glossy, bending the faint blue traces around it. This is a brine pool, a lake so dense with salt that it refuses to mix with the seawater above it. The boundary is unmistakable, a trembling line, a liquid horizon within the ocean. You float just above it, watching tiny ripples flicker across its surface, though nothing touches it. It looks solid from afar, like polished obsidian. But as you draw closer, the shimmer reveals delicate waves, movements so slow they seem almost imagined. The chemistry here is extreme. The salt concentration is so high that ordinary seawater rests on top like a lighter layer. To descend into this lake would be deadly for most creatures. The dense brine would pull water out of their cells and silence their bodies in moments. Even machines struggle. ROVs sometimes sink into the brine as though swallowed by liquid metal. The pool does not forgive intrusion. It accepts only what is adapted to it over millions of years. And yet at the edges of this impossible lake, life gathers. Strange creatures cling to the rim where normal water meets the dense, shimmering brine. Mussels cluster together in thick communities, their shells dark and sturdy. Tube worms flicker their pale plumes as they filter whatever nutrients drift toward them. Small crustaceans scuttle along the boundary as though patrolling the edge of two worlds. They live on the border of death. Too far into the brine and they perish. Too far into the seawater and they lose access to the chemical richness the lake provides. It feels almost mythic, this coexistence. A shimmering lake that cannot be touched. Shores where life clings like whispering pilgrims. Creatures adapted to live in the threshold, neither fully of the sea above nor the abyss below. If you reach out a hand, you imagine it hovering above the silent water just long enough to sense the strange gravity of this underworld mirror. But the pool remains still, unchanged, timeless, waiting for the next drift of marine snow to fall upon its surface. You leave the lake behind, As the seafloor slopes away from its edges, the water grows dimmer still, and again the quiet snowfall of marine snow surrounds you. It thickens here, floating down in endless pale cascades. Each particle drifts slowly, almost lazily, like thoughts loosening from the world above and sinking into darkness. This snow is the memory of the ocean. A flake might begin its descent as a fragment of a diatom, a tiny shell of silica left behind by a creature that lived briefly in the sunlit surface. Another may be a piece of a jellyfish, torn away by a passing current. Tiny crystals of salt cling to these drifting fragments, and bits of clay and pollen carried from distant continents. Sometimes a thread of mucus binds them together, turning a small particle into a larger one so it sinks more quickly. Each piece is fragile, ephemeral, yet together they sustain an entire kingdom below. The journey of marine snow can take weeks or months. As it falls, it becomes food for countless tiny creatures that rise and descend with the tides of day and night. By the time it reaches the abyssal floor, it has often passed through many mouths, broken down and reformed into simpler nutrients. But even then, after its long descent, after its fragments have scattered and merged, it still carries life to those waiting on the seafloor. You watch one of these flakes land softly on the sediment, joining a layer that has taken centuries to form. A small amphipod approaches, its body translucent and delicate, and gently brushes the flake into its mouth. It is a small act, almost invisible, yet it ties the surface to the deep in a cycle older than continents. The snowfall thickens as you drift, then slowly thins again. And ahead, the terrain begins to change. The floor of the ocean rises into soft rolling ridges. The seabed shifts from muddy sediment to darker, rougher stone. The temperature dips slightly. A faint tremble vibrates through the water, too subtle to feel but unmistakable in the way the particles around you quiver. You are nearing one of the Earth's greatest and most hidden features, the mid-ocean ridge, the longest mountain chain on the planet. It winds through the oceans like a scar, stretching more than 60,000 kilometers, longer than any range on land. Here, tectonic plates pull apart, and molten rock seeps upward to create new crust. It is the slowest birth on Earth, yet one of the most relentless. As you approach, the ridge rises before you like a submerged mountain range, dark and silent. The slopes are steep in places, gentle in others, carved by forces older than human memory. Within the cracks and fissures, strange shapes glint, fresh basalt, newly cooled, still holding the sheen of its once molten state. Some pieces curl into rounded shapes known as pillow lava, their bulbous forms frozen mid-flow. They resemble clusters of giant stones softened by time, or loaves of bread that swell gently before solidifying forever. The entire landscape hums with quiet energy. Here and there, thin plumes of warmer water drift upward, carrying minerals from below. The seafloor here is young, mere decades or centuries old, compared to the billions of years inscribed in the continents. Every moment, new crust is forming beneath your drifting feet. The earth is rebuilding itself in silence, stone rising from the molten heart of the planet into a world of soft darkness. Sometimes this slow creation erupts with surprising vigor. Underwater volcanoes can awaken without warning, spilling lava across the sea floor. The water muffles the violence, turning fiery explosions into muted storms of black ash and glowing rock. Whole islands have been born this way, rising from the sea in churning swirls of steam, only to be swallowed again centuries later. Down here, the echoes of those events linger. Fresh rock shaped by heat, fissures that still breathe gently, and mounds of minerals that shimmer like dusting of frost. And yet, even this volcanic world is only the prelude to something stranger. As you drift further along the ridge, the warmth beneath your feet grows stronger. Shadows begin to take shape in the water, columns rising from the sea floor, tall and narrow, exhaling something that looks like smoke. They are hydrothermal vents, the ocean's chimneys, the breath of the earth escaping into the deep. You can sense their presence long before you reach them. The water becomes warmer in sporadic bursts, swirling with minerals. The currents ripple differently here, drawn by heat and chemical gradients. Shapes loom ahead, dark against the darkness, towering structures built not from stone, but from precipitated minerals released in the venting water. And soon you reach them. Great black smokers rise up like ancient towers, belching thick plumes of mineral-rich fluid. The water they release is so hot, over 400 degrees Celsius, that it should boil instantly, and would were it not for the crushing pressure of the deep. Instead, the superheated water bursts forth like ink, curling into the surrounding cold and creating a storm of shimmering turbulence. The plumes drift upward in billowing columns, carrying clouds of sulfur, metals, and minerals that sparkle like tiny stars when illuminated by the faint glow of nearby life. Life blooms around the vents with a vibrancy that feels impossible in such darkness. What looks at first like smoke rising from broken chimneys is actually the foundation of an entire ecosystem. The minerals pouring from the vents create gradients of heat and chemistry that feed microscopic communities. Bacteria and archaea are capable of drawing energy not from sunlight, but from the raw power of chemical reactions. These small beings, invisible to the naked eye, form the base of a food web unlike anything found in the sunlit world. Their bodies contain enzymes tuned to extract energy from hydrogen sulfide, methane, and iron, substances toxic to most known life. Yet to these microbes, such chemicals are nourishment, fuel, even warmth. They cling to rocks, drift in milky clouds, and grow in mats so thick they look like pale velvet spread across the vent structures. They thrive where no plant could survive, each cell humming with the quiet work of building life from the bones of the earth. From these microscopic beginnings, a thriving alien city rises. Giant tube worms appear first, pale columns standing upright, swaying softly in the current. Their long, cylindrical bodies are encased in chitinous tubes that anchor them to the seafloor. At the top of each tube, a brilliant crimson plume unfurls like the petals of a silent flower. These plumes hold hemoglobin-rich blood that absorbs the chemicals released by the vents, feeding their internal symbiotic bacteria. Remarkably, the tube worms themselves have no mouths, no stomachs, no digestive tracts at all. They are living vessels, housing the microbes that nourish them. Through this partnership, they transform toxic compounds into rich, sustaining energy. The sight of a tube worm forest is unlike anything else in the ocean. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of white tubes sway in the heated water, each crowned with a red plume glowing softly in the shifting light. They stand like a field of ancient candles in a cathedral carved from darkness. The warmth of the vents creates shimmering currents that make their plumes ripple in slow waves, turning the entire scene into something both alien and comforting, like the heartbeat of the earth captured in motion. Beside the tube worms, clusters of mussels gather in dense beds, their dark shells glossy with mineral sheen. Inside them live bacteria similar to those within the tube worms, tiny partners that convert chemicals into nourishment. The mussels open their shells just slightly, letting the vent fluids wash across their tissues, while the bacteria within do the quiet alchemy needed for survival. Each mussel becomes a miniature laboratory, balancing heat, pressure, and chemistry with exquisite precision. Crabs scuttle among the rocks, their pale claws tapping softly as they forage along the mineral crusts. Some species cluster in groups near the vent openings, where the water is warmest. Their bodies are often ghost white, lacking pigment, sometimes lacking eyes. They sense chemical gradients with delicate hairs along their legs, navigating by taste rather than sight. When a warm plume shifts direction, they turn instantly, following the scent of nutrients in the water. Their movements feel almost synchronized, as if the vent itself is directing them through subtle streams of invisible signals. Everywhere you look, life flourishes. Strange, intricate, utterly unique. The vent field feels like a city in full bloom, each creature playing its part in an ecosystem powered not by sunlight, but by the deep earth's own breath. Even the rocks shimmer with life. Layers of bacteria coat them in hues of ivory gold or greenish black, forming patterns that look almost like ancient runes carved into the stone. The white smokers nearby release lighter clouds filled with barium, calcium, and silicon. Their plumes form pale, ghostly structures that grow into delicate chimneys, more fragile than the dark towers, but just as mesmerizing. These pale formations seem to glow in the faint scattered light, like underwater spires made of moonlight and ash. Together, the black and white smokers form a skyline, chimneys rising from the sea floor in clusters, each vent singing its quiet chemical song. You drift past this bustling oasis, feeling the temperature shift from cold to warm to cold again. The vents fade behind you, and the water grows still once more. But the deep has more wonders to offer. Ahead, a new scent of coldness enters the water, a chemical quiet different from the vent's warmth. The seafloor dips, and pale patches spread out like frost across the ground. These are cold seeps, places where methane and other gases seep upward through the sediment in ghostly, gentle exhalations. The water around the cold seep is not hot like at the vents. Instead, it is slightly cooler, carrying a faint metallic taste that only sensitive creatures can detect. The seafloor is coated with white or pale yellow mats, microbial carpets made of bacteria that thrive on methane. These mats ripple as currents pass through them, forming patterns like snowdrifts shaped by wind. Though the seep appears quiet, it is full of chemical life, each patch of bacteria drawing energy from the slow leak of ancient gases rising from deep within the earth. Here, mussels gather again, but these are different from the vent mussels. Their bodies are tuned to methane rather than sulfide, They're symbiotic bacteria specialized for another chemical feast. They cling to the sea floor in dense clusters, forming sprawling colonies that resemble underwater cities. Each shell is a small home, a chamber where methane is transformed into sustenance. When thousands cluster together, they perform a slow, communal metamorphosis, turning cold gas into the foundation for an entire community of life. Tube worms also appear here, though they differ in color and size from their vent relatives. Their plumes sway gently in the cooler streams, absorbing nutrients carried upward through the sediment. Crabs and fish meander across the area, drawn by the promise of food in these unusually rich patches. Some species of eelpouts and hagfish swim slowly across the sea, their bodies sinuous and patient. They move like shadows drifting over snow. Occasionally, bubbles of methane escape from the sea floor and drift upward in shimmering chains. They look like strings of glass beads rising into the dark, catching the faintest reflections from bioluminescent creatures nearby. When the bubbles pop, thin trails of cold seep bacteria swirl into the water, dispersing like pale smoke. These cold seeps are quieter than vents, gentler, more meditative. They lack the urgent warmth of the chimneys, but they offer something else: stability. Some seeps may persist for centuries, feeding slow-growing communities that remain unchanged across generations. It is a different kind of oasis, one built on the hush of methane instead of the roar of volcanic heat. As you continue forward, the terrain transitions again. The ground hardens under you, shifting from soft sediment to fractured rock. The fissures here stretch long and straight, cutting across the sea floor like the lines of an ancient script. These cracks form where tectonic plates pull apart or grind against one another. Their edges are sharp in places, softened in others by centuries of sediment sweeping across them. Some fissures are wide enough to swallow entire rocks. Others are thin as the line of a held breath. Here, the Earth's architecture becomes visible. You can see where the sea floor is being torn open, where new crust emerges, where old crust sinks back into the mantle. In some places, the ground seems to breathe, rising a little, then falling again, as tectonic forces shift beneath the surface. It is so subtle that it would be invisible to the eye, but the slow lift and settle of particles around you speaks of movement deep within the stone. These fractures are the vante of the planet, its fingerprints etched into the ocean floor by the steady motion of its plates. Some cracks run for kilometers, marking boundaries where worlds meet. Others curl around seamounts or weave through vent fields. They remind you that even in this still, silent realm, the planet is alive in its own slow, powerful way. And then, as you glide past the last of these fissures, the water begins to deepen again, darkening into a new shade of black. The underworld wonders fade behind you, and the abyss calls once more, guiding you towards deeper mysteries carved into the very bones of the earth. The sea floor ahead widens into a quiet, wavering expanse, where the darkness grows deeper and heavier, settling over everything like a velvet curtain. You drift as though moving inside the slow breath of the earth, surrounded by landscapes shaped not by sunlight or storms, but by forces so ancient and patient that they feel geological rather than biological. These last wonders of the underworld lie in the crossroads between creation and collapse, places where the ocean meets the restless crust, where the boundaries of the world shift year by year, millimeter by millimeter. The terrain begins to slope, forming long, gentle trenches that deepen gradually. The ground here is patterned with fractures, each line an echo of tectonic motion. Some stretch for kilometers, weaving through the seabed like the quiet handwriting of the earth. Others appear in scattered clusters, small, jagged openings where heat and minerals seep upward in breaths too soft to shape into plumes. You can sense movement beneath the rock, slow and deliberate, like the stirring of something vast beneath a blanket of sediment. A faint trembling travels up through the water. It is not a violent quake, not the kind that shatters continents or sends waves racing across the surface. Down here, it arrives like a heartbeat, a soft pulse carried through miles of stone. The ground shifts imperceptibly, and the particles around you lift in a momentary swirl, shimmering like dust caught in a beam of light. Then the motion fades again, leaving only silence. These micro-movements are the signature of tectonic plates sliding past one another, of the ocean floor stretching and contracting as if in slow meditation. It reminds you that this stillness rests atop a living planet, constantly reshaped by heat and pressure from within. As you drift farther, the ground reveals deeper scars. Long, narrow faults run across the plain, sometimes lined with fresh basalt, where lava once seeped upward. Other cracks open into small ravines, their walls etched with textures left by ancient flows. These are the places where continents once rifted apart, where oceans were born millions of years ago. Now the only witnesses are the quiet creatures that move across the stone like wandering stars. A solitary fish glides past, a rat tail, its body slender and ghostly, its tail tapering into a thin filament that drifts behind it like a loose thread. It moves between the fissures with unhurried ease, scanning the ground for organic debris left from distant falls of marine snow. Its eyes reflect faint traces of bioluminescence from above, gleaming like polished beads. For a moment, it hovers beside one of the deep cracks, sensing something only it understands. Chemical traces, perhaps, or a subtle warmth rising from below. Then, with a single slow sweep of its fin, it disappears into the dark. The world grows quieter as the last traces of the vent fields fade behind you. The warmth that once pulsed through the water disappears completely, replaced once again by the deep ocean's cold, steady calm. Here, life becomes more sparse, not absent, but measured, selective, each creature shaped by a careful balance between scarcity and endurance. The underworld wonders you have passed: brine pools, marine snowfalls, volcanic ridges, hydrothermal chimneys, cold seeps, tectonic scars, all still exist just behind you in the darkness, each a closed world with its own rules. But now their presence gives way to something even more profound: the vast migration of the Earth's crust itself. You drift over a region where the seafloor is slowly stretching. The rocks beneath you are younger, smoother, their surfaces fractured in fresh patterns. This is the birthplace of oceanic crust, where molten rock once rose in glowing ribbons before solidifying into obsidian black stone. Even now, faint traces of heat seep through the cracks, though not enough to create vents, just enough to influence the currents in subtle ways. The water swirls with a slightly different density, carrying minerals that shimmer like microscopic crystals. Then the landscape shifts again. the stretching transitions into a zone of bending and sinking. Here, one tectonic plate begins its long, slow descent beneath another. The seafloor dips gently at first, then more steeply. The rocks grow older, more brittle. Thick layers of sediment collect in the troughs, smoothed by ages of falling snow. These sediments hold the history of the ocean. Fragments of plankton, dust from faraway deserts, ash from ancient volcanic eruptions, and remains of creatures that lived and died long before humans existed. Each layer is a page in the Earth's story, written in the quiet ink of time. You pass over a section where the descent becomes more pronounced. The ground angles downwards into the beginning of a trench, a vast scar where the ocean floor folds into the planet like fabric being drawn under a door. Though you are not yet in the hadal depths, the world around you begins to feel different, more solemn, more spacious, more remote. The pressure increases with each meter, though the water itself hides it well, keeping the motion smooth. The silence complete. The creatures here are adapted to this steepening world. Long, ribbon-like fish drift beside the rocky walls, their bodies twisting in slow arcs to maintain balance. Tiny amphipods rise and fall like drifting seeds caught in a breeze. A pale sea cucumber inches across the slope with movements so gentle they seem like the shifting of the sediment itself. Nothing hurries, nothing wastes. Energy is sacred in this cold twilight of the deep. The walls of the trench are lined with minerals carried from distant parts of the ocean. Manganese nodules rest like scattered stones along the incline, each one growing millimeter by millimeter across millions of years. These nodules are older than many mountain ranges. Their surfaces gleam faintly, reflecting the occasional flicker of bioluminescence, as if holding starlight in their metallic shells. As you drift lower, the water becomes stiller, the currents gentler. Even the faint background murmur of distant vents fades entirely. The world feels carved out of silence. You sense no warmth, no chemical breath, only the vast, slow pull of the Earth's interior drawing the seafloor downward into deeper darkness. And yet, in this quiet, the deep reveals one more wonder, the largest story of all, unfolding so slowly that a single lifetime cannot perceive it. The tectonic plates shift beneath you, 1 inch at a time, into the mantle. The trench deepens each year by an amount so small it could be hidden beneath a grain of sand. But over millions of years, this movement shapes entire oceans, raises mountains, and stirs the planet's molten heart. The fissures you see on the walls are reminders of this journey, wrinkles etched into the Earth's skin by its endless breathing. Some cracks are lined with shimmering minerals. Others hold pools of trapped water, isolated for centuries. A few pulse faintly with the motion of the plate below, though the movement is too slow to feel. You hover for a moment, suspended above the dark slope. Behind you lies the world of vents and seeps and shimmering lakes. Ahead, the trench deepens into a realm even more silent, more pressurized, more mysterious, the hadal zone, where only the most ancient and patient forms of life dare to exist. You take one final look back at the underworld wonders, their distant light fading behind veils of shadow. Then, with a slow exhale, carried by the currents, you let yourself drift downward. The water cools further. The darkness thickens. The pressure rises. quiet but insistent. And the deep opens itself once more, inviting you into the next chapter of its endless night. The water grows impossibly dark as you drift downward, sliding past 6,000 meters into a world few eyes have ever seen. The abyssal plains fade behind you, their quiet vastness dissolving into a far more dramatic descent. Here, the ocean floor no longer lies flat. Instead, it opens into a series of chasms, deep, narrow rifts carved into the crust of the earth like ancient wounds. These are the hadal trenches, the final, secret corridors of the ocean, named after Hades, the underworld of myth. The comparison is fitting. This is a realm of silence, pressure, and profound stillness, the closest thing our planet has to another world. As the walls fall away into darkness, you find yourself entering the Mariana Trench, the deepest of them all. Its sheer slopes descend farther than Mount Everest would reach if inverted and placed here. Over 11,000 meters of black, cold water pressing down with unimaginable force. The pressure is difficult to grasp. Each square centimeter of your surroundings carries the weight of a small building. Each fingertips area would feel the equivalent of an elephant balancing on it. And yet, the water hides this violence with perfect grace. There is no crushing sensation, no trembling or distortion. The pressure simply is ancient, impartial, absolute. Life endures here by becoming part of the deep rather than resisting it. The creatures that inhabit this trench are shaped by physical rules that do not apply to the world above. Their cell membranes are infused with special fatty acids, flexible, fluid, under immense compression. These lipids remain soft where ordinary fats would harden, allowing their cells to function in an environment where water molecules themselves are squeezed into different configurations. These molecular adaptations are quiet miracles, tiny shields that keep proteins from folding incorrectly, keep enzymes from freezing into useless shapes, keep the delicate machinery of life humming in temperatures near freezing and pressures more intense than any valley or mountaintop could offer. You drift deeper, and the trench walls rise like jagged silhouettes on either side. The sediment between them is fine and pale, swirling occasionally from slow underwater landslides that move with the patience of glaciers. Here and there, small stones lie scattered, fragments carried down during ancient quakes, resting now as silent relics. At first, the world seems almost empty. But then, in the corner of your vision, something flickers. A tiny point of light blooms, then fades. Another follows, then another, like distant stars winking through a velvet sky. Against all logic, even here, where no sunlight has ever entered, bioluminescence persists. These faint glows come from delicate creatures drifting in the water column, minute jelly-like organisms flickering with internal lanterns. Their light is not bright, it is soft, almost hesitant, as if they are whispering secrets in a language made only of glimmers. The darkness around them is immense, yet their glow persists, a quiet affirmation that life refuses to surrender even at the planet's deepest threshold. As your eyes adjust to this near-perfect blackness, movement becomes clearer. Small amphipods drift towards the faint glow of falling marine snow, flakes that have survived the long journey from the surface world, now enriched with minerals collected along the way. These amphipods are translucent, their bodies appearing almost crystalline. Their shells contain trace amounts of metals absorbed from the sinking snow, giving them a faint, ghostly shimmer when the light catches them just right. They move in small, earnest motions, scavenging with tireless precision. Their diet is the memory of the upper ocean, organic flecks and mineral crumbs that drift into this abyss like offerings. Near the trench walls, a different inhabitant appears, a fish without eyes, its body a pale, milky white. Its skull is smooth, unbroken, its face devoid of sockets. But though it lacks eyes, it is far from blind. Along its skin run sensory canals that detect minute vibrations in the water, the faint tremble of amphipods swimming, the distant shuffle of sediment, even the subtle ripple of your own drifting presence. It navigates by feeling the shape of the water itself, moving slowly, but with a confidence born from deep familiarity. Its body sways with a kind of reverence, as though every motion is an act of respect for the crushing ancient dark around it. Lower still, the trench narrows, the slopes grow steeper, the ground littered with fragments of basalt and clay. In the crevices between rocks, the simplest forms of life appear. Lithotrophic bacteria, organisms that live not from sunlight or organic material, but from the very minerals of the earth itself. They feed on iron, sulfur, and hydrogen compounds released from the rocks, transforming their chemical energy into the building blocks of life. Their existence is a reminder that life does not depend solely on the sun, that it can root itself in stone and endure for eons. These lithotrophs gather in small colonies, forming patches of pale film that cling to the rocks. They are almost invisible to the naked eye, yet they hold profound meaning. Some scientists believe that life on Earth began with such bacteria, tiny cells drawing energy from the planet's raw chemistry long before oceans filled with blue light or continents formed their familiar shapes. To witness them here, at the bottom of the deepest trench, is to see something close to the beginning of life itself. Organisms stripped of all but the essentials, existing in a state of quiet purity. As you drift among these mineral eaters, you sense how the trench walls guide the water downward, channeling currents that are too faint for most creatures to notice. And yet, even the smallest stirrings matter here. A faint tremor vibrates through the rock, perhaps a distant quake, perhaps a distant shift in the tectonic plates. Sediment lifts gently, like dust stirred in a library untouched for centuries. It settles again in slow spirals, dusting the creatures below with a fine, ancient veil. A lone snailfish appears, pale, soft, luminous in its delicacy. Its body seems made of milk glass, its fins like translucent petals drifting in gentle currents. It hovers effortlessly above the trench floor, feeding on amphipods with tiny, precise snaps of its mouth. This fragile-looking creature is one of the deepest living fish known to science, surviving at depths where pressure is so intense that bones would snap and proteins would collapse in unadapted bodies. Yet the snailfish moves with a softness that seems almost holy, as though it is in harmony with the crushing dark rather than resisting it. The trench deepens again, narrowing into a silent corridor. The water here is so still it feels suspended in time. Nothing stirs except the faint spiraling of sinking particles. Even your own movement seems hushed, absorbed by the blackness. The pressure is immense, Yet everything feels weightless, your body borne by a darkness that gives nothing back, holds everything with quiet certainty. At the very bottom lies the Challenger Deep, a depression even deeper than the surrounding trench. It feels like the final hollow of the earth, a place where light, warmth, and memory have never existed. And yet life persists here too. Microbes that endure pressures 1,000 times greater than the surface world, that carry within them enzymes built to withstand near impossible compression, that continue dividing, metabolizing, and evolving, quietly writing their existence into the planet's oldest ledger. As you drift above this final depth, you sense a silence unlike any before, a silence that carries the weight of planets, the patience of time, the calm of places untouched by change. Nothing in the human world compares to it. Here, in the hadal zone, life does not flourish loudly. It endures softly. It whispers rather than sings. It persists in forms stripped down to their purest essence, guided only by the faint pulse of chemical energy and the ancient rhythms of the earth. And in this silence, you rise slightly with the water, feeling the trench release you. The pressure remains immense, but the darkness feels gentler now, as if the deep itself has welcomed your presence, allowing you to witness a world few will ever know exists. Ahead, a faint current begins to lift you upwards toward lands of twilight and stories still waiting to unfold. The deep grows softer as you drift upward through the darkness, and gradually you begin to sense another presence, something neither creature nor current, yet undeniably alive in its own quiet way. It hums gently, glimmering with small, deliberate movements. At first, it resembles a strange fish, a shimmering speck of metal moving through the blackness with a serenity that does not belong to the natural world. And then you see it clearly, a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, floating like a steel firefly in the deep. Its lights are warm and faint, casting a soft golden glow that melts into the surrounding dark. The beams do not blaze, they whisper, touching the water with the gentlest possible brightness so as not to disturb the creatures that call this realm home. The ROV hovers without effort, suspended by tiny adjustments from thrusters that exhale water in slow, careful puffs. Each motion is subtle, guided by hands far above in a world filled with sunlight. Yet down here, the machine moves with the grace of something dreaming, a quiet messenger from the surface. Cameras blink like sleepy eyes, adjusting to the low light. Mechanical arms rest folded at its sides like delicate limbs, waiting not to grasp, but to observe. The ROV's glow reflects off drifting particles, turning marine snow into swirling constellations. It is a strange sight, a machine made by human hands, moving through a world shaped by silence and pressure, yet somehow blending into the rhythm of the deep. Not far away, another shape descends, a human-occupied submersible, its rounded form crafted to endure the weight of the ocean with unwavering calm. It drifts slowly, almost reverently, making its way through the darkness. The vessel's lights are dim, adjusted to match the mood of the sea. Inside, 2 or 3 scientists sit quietly, listening as the hull murmurs with soft creaks, the sound of the ocean pressing steadily against it like gentle breaths on a sleeping body. The submarine's oxygen system creates a faint rhythm, a soft hiss, a sigh, a tiny click. To the people inside, It is the sound of life being filtered, refreshed, offered back to them in perfect balance. But out here, drifting through the abyss, that sound is barely more than a drop of water falling into a still pond, a whisper wrapped in the cold. Descending in such a vessel is not a rush or an adventure. It is a meditation. Each meter downward brings a greater stillness, a thicker quiet. The scientists speak little. Their hands move slowly over instruments. Their eyes watch the darkness with a sense of reverence, as though entering a cathedral carved from the planet's deepest thoughts. And in a way, it is just as difficult as leaving the Earth entirely. Many say it is harder. The vacuum of space is emptiness, but the deep ocean is full of pressure, full of weight, full of a density that grows with crushing insistence. To descend is to remain calm under forces that push inward from every direction. The hull must be perfect. The joints must hold. The seals must not falter. A crack the width of a hair could spell disaster. This is why reaching the bottom of the ocean is as challenging as reaching the moon. In space, machines fight nothing. In the deep, every descent is a negotiation with physics. Pressure versus structure, silence versus breath, darkness versus human sight. And yet humans continue to try, drawn not by conquest, but by the quiet promise that something beautiful waits below. The first time a human ever witnessed a hydrothermal vent, the moment did not burst with triumph. It unfolded in wonder. The ROV slid through the water, and suddenly the darkness parted to reveal a tower of black smoke rising from the sea floor. The scientists watching from the ship above felt a hush fall over the room. They saw not chaos, but creation, a place where life thrived without sunlight, powered by the deep Earth's chemistry. Tube worms with plumes red as embers, mussels clustered in cities, crabs moving like pale ghosts. A world no one imagined could exist. A world lit not by a sun, but by heat from stone. That discovery changed everything. It shifted the understanding of life's boundaries and revealed new possibilities for where life might exist beyond Earth. Then came the discovery of methane hydrate, ice that burns. White chunks lifted from the sea floor, appearing solid and cold. But when touched by warmth, they released gas in a sudden bloom of bubbles, burning with a pale blue flame. These hydrates hold vast reserves of methane, stored under pressure in crystalline cages. They are fragile, sensitive, easily disturbed, and their presence shapes both the chemistry of the deep sea and the planet's climate. Scientists realized that these icy forms might record ancient shifts in temperature, storing secrets locked away for thousands of years. Each discovery made the ocean feel deeper, more layered, more mysterious, more like a living library that had waited for someone to open its pages. And yet, all of this pales in comparison to the greatest mystery of all, the vast realm of marine microbes whose DNA remains unknown, unnamed, unseen, except through fragments. More than 90% of the microbial genetic material collected from the deep ocean does not match any known organism. Their sequences are like whispers from life forms that have not yet been identified. Microbes thriving in vents, in sediments, in the cold of trenches, in the warmth of seeps, in the drifting snow between worlds. Scientists call this vast, uncharted genetic territory dark life, not because it is sinister, but because it remains hidden beyond the edges of human knowledge. Each new sample collected from the deep reveals more fragments of this invisible kingdom. Some microbes appear ancient, preserving characteristics from the earliest days of life on Earth. Others seem astonishingly modern, with adaptations so intricate and precise that they challenge the limits of what biology was thought to be capable of. ROVs and submersibles search for them with gentle tools, filters, syringes, small robotic arms that scoop sediments with the tenderness of a cupped hand. Samples are lifted slowly through the water, protected from changes in temperature and pressure. Back on the surface, scientists open these containers as though opening messages from another world. They look through microscopes and see shapes they cannot name. They sequence strands of DNA and find patterns that do not fit within any known tree of life. The ocean holds more genetic diversity than any forest or desert or river on Earth. Yet most of that diversity remains unseen, hidden in the deep's cold breath. These discoveries reshape not just marine science, but the understanding of life itself, its adaptability, its origins, its persistence against pressure and time. As your drift continues, the ROV's lights dim behind you, and the submersible rises like a slow bubble toward the world of air and sun. But the deep remains, quiet and ancient, a realm shaped by patience. Machines and humans come and go, but the ocean holds its secrets with gentle indifference, revealing them only in whispers to those who descend quietly enough to listen. You float upward now, carried by the slow exhale of the sea, ready to enter the final part of the story, where science and myth soften into one another, and the deep becomes something more than a place. It becomes a memory. The deeper you drift, the more the ocean begins to feel like memory rather than place, like a dream that the Earth once had, long before mountains rose or forests breathed. Down here, science and myth fold into each other, their boundaries dissolving like light in water. What is real becomes wondrous. What is wondrous becomes quietly true. The world grows soft, symbolic, ancient. It feels less like exploration and more like returning to something familiar, something written into the quietest corners of life. You begin to sense hidden rivers flowing beneath the darkness, currents unlike the ones you've known, running not with fresh water or tides, but with meaning. These are the brine pools you passed earlier, but from here they feel different. No longer geological oddities, but thresholds. Their surfaces ripple faintly, thin as silk, trembling with the weight of a world above and the pull of a world below. The brine is so dense, so heavy, that seawater refuses to touch it. The boundary remains perfect, untouched, an unbroken mirror at the bottom of the sea. From this distance, the pool looks like a doorway, a lens suspended in darkness. It reflects nothing because nothing reaches it. Instead, it holds its own stillness, its own quiet, its own gravity. If there were an underworld hidden beneath the ocean, this would be its entrance, a gate where the laws of the surface no longer matter, where salt shapes reality and life gathers like pilgrims at the edge of a sacred lake. The creatures living along its rim seem like guardians stationed between realms, their bodies half in shadow, half in glow. Not far from these silent lakes stand the hydrothermal vents, rising like pillars in a sleeping cathedral. True Denkur Longdat, lamps lit by the planet's internal heat. When you look at them now, they do not feel like chimneys. They feel like ancient braziers, burning with invisible flame. Their plumes rise like dark incense, curling into the water with reverence. The minerals drifting from them shimmer like sparks, small glowing motes that seem almost spiritual in their ascent. The vents warm the deep, not just with heat, but with story. Around them, forests of tube worms sway like candles in a temple, their crimson plumes opening and closing in slow prayer. Crabs wander gently across the mineral floor, their pale shells glowing faintly in the warmth. Mussels cluster in stone-like cities. Everything feels deliberate, ceremonial, as though this place is not merely an ecosystem, but an offering, a quiet celebration of life's persistence. And then, as the warmth fades and the vents fall behind you, a cooler breath drifts upward from the seafloor. It is subtle at first, then unmistakable, the soft exhalation of a cold seep. Here methane and ancient gases escape the earth in whispers, seeping through sediment like the dreams of the planet rising toward the open sea. The flow is so gentle that it scarcely stirs the water. It is a sigh more than a current. These seeps do not flash or roar or shimmer. They rest, they drift, they cradle. Their presence is like the slow breathing of something vast beneath the crust. The bacterial mats that grow here resemble frost or pale moss or the dust of ancient pages. They ripple softly as though remembering winds they have never felt. The creatures that gather here behave differently than those at vents, not frantic or fiery, but calm, contemplative, patient. The mussels sit like small stone homes, absorbing methane with quiet certainty. Worms and crabs move with gentle restraint, leaving delicate trails across the sediment. Everything feels slower here, more introspective. The cold seep exists halfway between geology and emotion, a place where chemistry becomes a lullaby. It feels not like discovery, but remembrance. As you drift deeper into this mythic underworld, something begins to change. The landscape stops feeling external and starts feeling internal, as though you are floating through a memory not of the ocean, but of life itself. The deep becomes a metaphor, a reflection of origins long buried beneath time. Scientists have long wondered how life began, and one leading idea points not toward the sunlit surface, but toward places like the vents you passed earlier. In those warm chimneys, life may have first awakened. Cells forming from minerals, energy drawn from chemistry, not sunlight. Before plants, before photosynthesis, before oxygen filled the sky, there were only these dark engines on the ocean floor. In their shadows lived ancient microbes, organisms that never needed the sun, that breathed chemicals and built themselves from stone. They were the ancestors of everything now alive. The first creatures to whisper metabolism into existence. The earliest architects of cells. They are the Ku to Kongbao Gyo Nin Dei Unsung, the great-grandparents of life, who thrived in darkness billions of years before the first dawn ever broke across the earth. When you look at the deep ocean now, it is no longer just a habitat. It is a living fossil. It is the past, preserved in cold and pressure. It is the world as it once was, volatile, shadowed, chemical, alive. You begin to understand that the Earth's early surface, so often imagined as bright oceans, under a young sun may have looked nothing like the world you know. Instead, it may have resembled the hadal trenches, cold, dark, warmed only by internal heat, filled with vents breathing energy into chemical seas. Life did not rise from sunlight. It rose from the planet's interior, from stone, pressure, and heat. This deep world is not alien to our beginnings. It is our beginnings. The thought feels like a tide moving through you, slow, warm, ancient. In the soft glow of drifting plankton, you feel something like recognition. This is not a descent into strangeness. It is a reunion. And the deeper you drift, the more the ocean feels like a story your body already knows. You continue drifting, and a sense of returning begins to grow around you, quiet but steady, like a slow pulse rising from the dark. The water feels warmer, not in temperature, but in presence, as though the ocean recognizes its own history unfolding through your journey. You begin to sense that the deep is not only a physical place, it is a memory carried by the planet, preserved in the black folds of its oldest waters. The ancient microbes you imagined at the vents, the stone-eating bacteria hidden in the hadal cracks, the soft-bodied creatures that glow in the absence of sunlight, all of them echo with a truth as gentle as it is immense. Life did not need the sky to begin. Before forests, before rivers, before the continents found their shapes, the deep ocean was the first cradle. Pressure was the first sculptor. Chemistry was the first spark. And darkness was the first sky. As you move upward through that awareness, the darkness thins slightly, revealing currents that swirl like half-remembered dreams. You see shapes that are not creatures nor stones, but patterns, circles, arcs, tremors in the water that feel symbolic. They remind you that the ocean has watched over life longer than any land, holding each new form with patience, with quiet, with time. When the earliest creatures left the sea to walk on land, they carried oceans inside them, salt in their blood, waves in their cells, ancient rhythms in their heartbeat. And even now, every human heartbeat echoes the pulse of tides that are billions of years old. The ocean is not separate from life. It is the part of the planet that remembers everything. The creatures drifting around you seem to embody that memory. A soft-bodied fish glides past, its silhouette delicate against the faint shimmer of particles. Its bones, the little that remain, are curved in patterns shaped by millions of years living in these depths. A small jelly pulses in gentle intervals, its glow fading like a lantern drawn into meditation. Every movement feels ancient. Every motion carries the softness of something that has never needed speed or noise to survive. You drift past a colony of tiny amphipods, their bodies clear as carved ice. They feed slowly on the falling snow, a practice as old as time. They may not know it, but they are participating in a ritual that connects every level of the ocean, from the surface where the snow is born to the abyss where it is consumed. Their lives are threads in the longest tapestry on Earth. Above them, a single glowing creature appears, a jelly with tendrils trailing like pale ribbons. It pulses once, twice, leaving behind a brief, delicate trail of light. Its glow is not for hunting or escape. It is a quiet declaration of presence, a signature written in luminescence, a reminder that even in the deepest night, the ocean expresses itself through light, through motion, through the gentle language of resilience. And as you rise gently alongside this drifting constellation, you begin to understand why the deep ocean feels so familiar. It is because its logic, slow, quiet endurance, is written into all living things. It is embedded in DNA, in cellular rhythms, in the chemistry of life. The hydrogen bonds that hold your very being together were shaped in places like these, long before sunlight ever warmed the surface. As this realization settles into you, the water grows paler, not brighter but softer. You feel as though you are floating through a memory of the early Earth, billions of years compressed into a single deep breath. Scientists often say that the deep resembles the young planet more than any landscape on land. Here, temperature has barely changed over eons. Here, pressure rules all. Here, the simplicity of life strips it down to its essence. It is not a past that has been forgotten. It is a past that continues to exist. The deeper ocean, in all its quiet power, holds the Earth's childhood in its arms. And in that childhood lies a truth. Every form of life on land came from the sea. The forests, the insects, the birds, the mammals, the humans, all trace their lineage to these shadowed waters. When you look at terrestrial creatures, you are seeing shapes that began as fins, senses that began as currents, hearts that began as pumps pushing ocean through primitive veins. To sink down into the deep, then, is not to enter an alien world. It is to come home. This is why the journey feels familiar, even comforting. It mirrors a return to something fundamental. As you drift through the last layers of darkness, you feel as though you are touching the planet's first memories, the gentle stirrings of life, learning to breathe, to divide, to move, to glow. And with each meter upwards, that memory softens into metaphor. The ocean becomes a story not just of origins, but of continuity. It tells you that life persists in pressure, in darkness, in scarcity. That silence can be nurturing. That slowness can be strength. That beginnings often hide in places where light never reaches. As you ascend, the deep releases you with tenderness. The water grows less dense with shadow. A faint blue returns at the edges of the world. The currents shift, guiding you toward the twilight once more. You leave behind the brine pools, those silent doors between worlds. You leave behind the vents, the lamps of the Earth's interior. You leave behind the cold seeps, the quiet breath of continents. You leave behind the ancient microbes, the first storytellers of life. You leave behind the trenches, Earth's deepest memory vaults. But they do not leave you. They linger like a soft echo in your mind, a reminder that beneath the noise of the surface world lies a place where life moves gently, where darkness becomes comfort, where the earth keeps its oldest secrets wrapped in silence. You rise slowly, carried by the ocean's calm hands, and the deep world dims behind you like a dream at dawn. Still present, still warm, still part of you. For the ocean is not only the beginning of life, it is its lullaby. And now, let yourself drift upward, slowly at first, as though the deep is releasing you one gentle thread at a time. The darkness softens into blue, the blue softens into grey, and the water around you grows lighter with each quiet breath. You rise the way a dream fades, tenderly, without hurry, carrying pieces of the night with you. The weight of the ocean loosens from your shoulders. The pressure dissolves. You feel your body becoming lighter, warmer, nearer to waking. Above you, the surface shimmers like a distant sky, rippling softly, waiting to meet you again. And as you float toward it, you sense how small this journey has been compared to the vastness still below. The deep ocean keeps almost all its secrets. Tonight, you touched only the thinnest layers, the faintest whispers of a world older than memory. But that is enough. Enough to remind you that wonder still lives quietly in the places we cannot see. Enough to soften the mind. Enough to soothe the heart. As you reach the surface, let your breath fall into the slow rhythm of waves, steady, calming, endless. Let the water close behind you like the final page of a gentle story. Rest now. Let the ocean watch over your sleep, and may its faraway tides follow you into peaceful dreams tonight.